Well, I'm going to start, and I'm actually going to start by trying to knit a lot with what you said, Jack, because I actually go along with a lot of the arguments that you've put together. And I think it may actually also knit with the digitalization side of things. So I'm going to start with what Jack said and then talk about it within the context of energy, because I think it's important. The first thing he was talking about was actually skills, and the fact that obviously the youth of today are going to be living in a very different world tomorrow. And I totally agree with that, and I think that's a very important point that we've got to think about. The second point, as you were finishing, was talking about whether our capitalistic model is broken. And I think that's a very key point as well, in that, and I've just got some statistics here, which I'll just show you, but just to show that Jack's absolutely right, and these statistics come from America. 2 corporations control 90% of the American beer market. 5 banks control about half of the nation's banking assets. 5 banks, that's it. Many states have health insurance policies, but actually only 2 of them have about 95% of the United States business. And then we talk about Google and we talk about Facebook. And the fact is that this is not just about monopolies, it is about the fact that it's been convenient for governments as well to allow these large organizations to develop, okay? Now let's translate that into the energy business. BP, Shell, national oil companies, PLN, PGN. These are all very large and in many cases monopolistic companies, okay? Now let's translate that to a different world, okay? Let's go to Finland. In Finland, they've got these little villages where they're not even looking at energy as electricity anymore. They're looking at energy as being electricity and water and waste and land utilization in a different way, which comes back to your point about digital connectivity, coming up with new products in very different ways. Likewise, if we want to find solution for people at the bottom of the pyramid, the microgrids, as you say, do we really think they can be managed by a Shell or a BP or whatever effectively? The answer is no. They have to be managed at community level. Okay? So, where does this lead us to? It leads us into a very interesting question about who manages energy in the future. Should it be managed by states and central governments? Or should it increasingly be managed by communities at a more decentralized level? And that question is not only about energy, it's about Facebook and Google and everybody else. Is, do we really want these massive organizations to control our world of tomorrow? Or do we need to actually split them up into smaller units that are more controllable, more livable, and more community-based? Now, to me, that is the question about where we're going in the future. We have a tug of war going on. We're either going to live in a world that is going to become more and more centralized, more and more controlled, or we break that link and create a more community-based society again. And I think that's about energy, and it's about business, and it's actually about the digital world. And funnily enough, people are talking about Facebook and Google these days and saying maybe they are too big. Maybe they do need to be broken up. And that's where I think the future will go.
Okay, the challenge, of course, is that a lot of the big boys are working together with the authorities, with the powers that be. So it doesn't benefit either of them to disrupt the other quite often, right?
No, well, you could argue that, but if you go back, a few years ago, not that many years ago, when the oil and gas business started, we had the Rockefellers of this world, and the US government turned around and said, you've got too big. We're going to split this oil company down into 6 units, because the governments were scared that these actual companies were more powerful than they are. And I think we're getting to that discussion now. I think we will see governments begin to start decentralizing and controlling the way businesses develop in the future.